Vincent Price was Hollywood's king of horror. He had worked with legends like Boris Karloff and Peter Lorre without any problems. But in 1972, something happened on a movie set that changed everything. One actor tried to charm Price by singing opera to him. Price's response was so brutal that it started a 20-year silent war. The two men refused to speak directly to each other ever again. They used assistants to pass messages between them. The co-star he silenced might be the last person you'd expect. Vincent Leonard Price Jr. was born on May 27, 1911, in St. Louis, Missouri. Just 2 weeks later, his father went to the National Candy Makers Association conference as its leader. Because of that, people started calling baby Vincent the Candy Kid. His father, Vincent Sr., was the president of the National Candy Company, which became one of the biggest candy companies in the world by 1928. They were best known for making jawbreakers and jelly beans. But their fortune didn't begin there. It started back in 1852, when Vincent's grandfather, Dr. Vincent Clarence Price, created the first cream of tartar baking powder. In 1891, he sold his company share for $1.5 million, which would be around $38 million today. That money almost disappeared in the Panic of 1893, but somehow the family bounced back and even grew richer over time. Their roots stretched far back in American history. One of Vincent's ancestors, Peregrine White, was actually the first English child born in colonial Massachusetts in 1620, on the Mayflower. Vincent was the youngest of 4 children. His mother, Marguerite Daisy Wilcox Price, used to be a schoolteacher. She made sure Vincent read books and loved theater, and she kept high standards at home. The family believed in culture and education, but their candy business wasn't as innocent as it looked. Like many companies in the early 1900s, they paid workers very low wages, sometimes just 10 or 20% of what adult men earned. In 1928, Vincent's father built a giant candy factory at 4230 Gravois Avenue. It had a bright, colorful logo with candy on it. Even though they were wealthy, Vincent said they weren't so rich that people envied them, but they were successful enough that others respected them. His parents wanted their kids to carry on the family name. Vincent got a deep education in culture, even going on a tour of Europe at 16. He entered Yale in 1933. The house Vincent grew up in was no ordinary home. It stood at 6320 Forsyth Boulevard and looked like something out of a storybook. The house later became part of Washington University. It had arched windows, tall corridors, Georgian-style details, and even a long hallway used as an art gallery. It was packed with books, paintings, and rare items. When Vincent was just 12, he bought a Rembrandt etching for $37.50. That was a huge amount for a child, equal to hundreds of dollars today. Even as a boy, Vincent had a naughty side. He once admitted to sneaking candy out of his father's factory. But he was also charming, and everyone called him Vinny. His love for art and theater started in that big house, surrounded by beautiful things and endless books. During World War I, between 1914 and 1918, even wealthy families like the Prices had to deal with rationing. But Vincent's father used the candy company to keep their lifestyle going. He threw fancy parties at home, and these events exposed young Vincent to performers, singers, and vaudeville acts. Since entertainment was rare during wartime, the Price home became a place full of joy and laughter. Their business actually did well during those years. Sugar was hard to get, and their baking powder was a must-have for cooking. These early performances left a big mark on Vincent, shaping his love for drama and storytelling. The factory, built in 1928, was only possible because of how well the company did during and after the war. But life wasn't always kind to Vincent. Because he had some German heritage, he was bullied badly during World War I. At the St. Louis Country Day School, starting in 1917, kids teased him and even hurt him. They thought he wasn't loyal to America. This was painful, especially since his family had roots going back to the Mayflower. He rode a school trolley called The Special every day, a trip that took 40 minutes and often came with more bullying. These tough years built his inner strength. They also made him care deeply about justice and fairness later in life. His experience as an outsider helped him play misunderstood characters with real emotion in his horror films. Vincent started 6th grade at St. Louis Country Day School in 1922. He stood out right away. The school had a brand new auditorium that could hold 500 people. And by 1925, Vincent was already part of the school's drama group, the Troubadours. He started small in a show called Pickles in 1927. In 1928, he played a Spanish army captain in El Bandido. And by his senior year, he played the top role in All at Sea. He wasn't just acting, he was also the group's treasurer, proving he could handle both creativity and responsibility. The school's headmaster and his wife believed in him so much that they made scrapbooks of his performances. In 1929, Vincent began studying at Yale during the Great Depression. It was a tough time, and he had to work hard just to take art history classes. He made the dean's list so he could study what he loved. He earned 2 degrees, one in art history and another in English, and graduated in 1933 at 22. Yale gave him access to Broadway shows before they opened, which made him fall deeper in love with theater. He also watched nearly every movie made between 1930 and 1933. He said it helped him understand acting. He even joined the Yale Glee Club and kept adding to his art collection. In 1934, with $900 from his parents, Vincent went to London to study at the Courtauld Institute of Art. The school was packed with brilliant minds who had fled Hitler's rise in Europe. But Vincent got distracted. He began skipping classes to act in small theater roles. One day, a friend took him to the Gate Theater. They needed Americans for the play Chicago, and Vincent got cast on the spot. That small role led to something bigger. He got noticed for his striking resemblance to Prince Albert and was offered the role in Victoria Regina. Within months, he went from earning $5 a week in London to $250 a week on Broadway. That was over 9 times more pay. This lucky moment launched his entire acting career. Before that big break, Vincent worked as a teacher in New York in 1935. At Riverdale Country School, he taught art history, drove the bus, coached soccer, and watched over dorm rooms. He believed students should see real art, so he took them to museums, which upset some parents. Even though he didn't make much money, the job kept him stable while he stayed close to the theater world. In December 1935, Vincent made his Broadway debut as Prince Albert alongside Helen Hayes. He was only 24, but behind the scenes, he was terrified. He fainted during rehearsals from sheer panic. Other actors had to revive him more than once. Still, the show ran for 203 performances and was a big hit. People joked that Vincent was method acting the role of a weak prince. His next big chapter began when Orson Welles invited him to the Mercury Theater in 1938. At first, Vincent admired Welles and called him a genius. But things soon went bad. Welles often skipped rehearsals, leaving everyone stressed. Vincent's letters show his growing frustration. Their fights backstage got so intense that others feared it might turn physical. Even so, Vincent stayed friends with other Mercury actors like Joseph Cotten and Norman Lloyd. In April 1938, Vincent married actress Edith Barrett. The wedding was lovely, but the couple was broke. Friends like Orson Welles helped with gifts. They lived in a small, roach-infested apartment while trying to find acting work. Their son, Vincent Barrett, was born in August 1940. But money problems and stress crushed the marriage. In 1948, they divorced. Edith won full custody, and Vincent lost most of his savings and his family. Vincent's Hollywood career didn't start smoothly either. In 1938, he acted in his first film, Service de Luxe. But he almost got fired for improvising lines. The director hated it, but lead actress Constance Bennett stood up for him and saved his role. Still, the experience scared Vincent so much that he became overly careful with directors afterward. In 1941, he starred in the Broadway hit Angel Street as a cruel husband who drove his wife insane. The play was a massive success, running for 1,295 performances. But the role consumed Vincent emotionally. He started acting like his character off stage, and his co-star, Judith Evelyn, hated working with him. By 1942, he had a full mental breakdown. He was found catatonic in his dressing room and had to be hospitalized. He was replaced, but that breakdown became legendary on Broadway. Vincent Price never planned to become a horror icon. In the early 1940s, he still hoped to be a romantic lead. But that all changed in 1944 when he played Shelby Carpenter in Lorre. He was paid $25,000 for the role, and it shocked everyone. He wasn't the sweet, charming man people expected. He was sly, fake, and dangerous. Critics described him as having pillow-like lips and a voice like honey. But under that smooth surface, his character was a manipulative gigolo. The role was so strong that 20th Century Fox never looked at him the same way again. At just 33 years old, his days as a romantic hero were over. He was now the villain. And that change stuck. 2 years later, in shock, he went even deeper. He played a psychiatrist who murdered his wife and seduced his nurse. It wasn't just acting. Vincent took it seriously. He spent 3 weeks in Bellevue Hospital, watching real psychiatric patients, studying shock therapy, and even learning how to give fake insulin injections. He hypnotized crew members on set just to prepare. What he created was so disturbing that mental health groups begged theaters not to show the film. They were afraid it would scare war veterans away from getting help. Some theaters banned it completely, calling it morally sick. In 1948, during The Three Musketeers, a sword fight scene with Gene Kelly went horribly wrong. A dull prop sword turned out to be real. It sliced into Price's right hand so deep the tendons snapped. He lost 2 pints of blood and needed 47 stitches. Blood splattered onto his cardinal costume while the cameras were still rolling. Vincent refused to stop filming. MGM halted production for 3 weeks, losing $180,000, but he kept going. That dedication earned him a 7-year contract worth $2 million. But his right hand never fully healed, and he had to favor his left in every sword scene after that. Around this time, the FBI started watching him. Between 1947 and 1950, they suspected him of being a communist. They tapped his phone, read his mail, and questioned his friends. Why? Because he had raised money for Spanish Civil War refugees and joined a few peace groups. In 1954, Camel cigarettes dropped him from a popular TV show without warning. That cost him $75,000 per year. He was suddenly banned from television. To save his career, he secretly wrote a 5-page letter to J. Edgar Hoover, denying everything. His family didn't know about it until after he died. The FBI file was over 200 pages long. They cleared his name just before he was suspected of a suicide attempt in 1955. No one talked about it. In 1949, while filming The Bribe, scandal hit hard. Ava Gardner was secretly seeing both Robert Taylor and Vincent Price at the same time. When her husband Mickey Rooney found out, he threatened to sue MGM for $500,000 unless they fired them. Vincent was already married to Edith Barrett, but he was caught leaving Ava's hotel at 3 a.m. It made the front pages. The director quit. A new one came in and made them reshoot all the love scenes. MGM lost $322,000. Ava later admitted she was with Vincent for 4 months. She said he was much more passionate than people thought. In 1953, House of Wax changed everything. It was his first big horror film, and it was terrifying for real. His burn makeup looked so real that the studio banned him from the cafeteria. One woman fainted just seeing him. During makeup tests, he actually got burned. His eyebrows and eyelashes were singed off. Things got worse when a special effects fire got out of control. It burned a hole through the roof of the soundstage. Firemen rushed in, but the director, who had only one eye and couldn't even see 3D, kept filming. That movie made Price a horror star, but it came at a real physical cost. In 1958, The Fly pushed things further. Vincent played the brother of a man who accidentally turned into a monster. The moment where the human-headed fly screams, "Help me! Help me!" haunted audiences for years. The fly costume was so realistic that it gave Vincent nightmares. The movie was based on a story first published in Playboy, and it became such a hit that it got 2 sequels, Return of the Fly in 1959 and Curse of the Fly in 1965. Price's connection to horror was now permanent. Then came House on Haunted Hill in 1959. Vincent played a millionaire who offered 5 strangers $10,000 each if they could survive one night in his haunted mansion. During one scene, a skeleton flew over the crowd on a wire, making people scream, until teens started throwing candy at it. Some parents complained that Vincent's performance scared child actors too much on set. The film used tricks like buzzers under seats and countdown clocks before jump scares. It was silly, but it worked. Vincent was now the king of horror. That same year, his personal life was falling apart. His wife, Edith Barrett, once a respected actress, was dealing with mental illness, alcohol, and drug addiction. Their marriage collapsed in 1948. He lost custody of their son, Vincent Barrett Price. Edith became a recluse and died in a nursing home in 1977. In 1949, he married costume designer Mary Grant. They had a daughter, Victoria, in 1962. She was named after Victoria Regina, the play that launched his career. Vincent's move toward horror roles happened while his real life was filled with stress and heartbreak. That emotional pain made his tortured characters feel even more real. Also in 1959, he starred in The Bat, a murder mystery set in a creepy house. Price played Dr. Wells, a shady character suspected of being the killer. This was his 3rd horror film that year. The others were Return of the Fly and The Tingler. The Bat had a spooky jazz score by Alvino Rey and was released as a double feature with The Mummy in small-town theaters. Publicity photos made sure he looked just like he did in House on Haunted Hill, reinforcing his new image as a horror villain. Then came 1960. House of Usher marked his first Edgar Allan Poe film with director Roger Corman. Corman shot the opening in a burned forest to make it look haunting. The movie had only 4 actors, but it didn't matter. It was scary and atmospheric. That success kicked off a full series of Poe films, and Price became the voice of those stories. In 1961, The Pit and the Pendulum pushed the danger to real life again. Actor John Kerr was tied down for a torture scene with a giant swinging blade. The fake blade stuck to his chest, so they used a real one painted to look fake. The blade came within inches of him as it swung across a 50-foot arc. He had only a steel belt to protect him. Corman even removed every other film frame to make the blade look faster and more dangerous. They used a wide-angle lens to make the torture chamber look much bigger than it really was. That filming trick was copied by many other horror directors later. By 1963, Price had become so famous in horror that Corman decided to try something new. The Raven was part horror, part comedy. It starred Price, Boris Karloff, and Peter Lorre, with a young Jack Nicholson. But things behind the scenes were chaotic. Peter Lorre kept improvising, which annoyed Karloff. Cameras caught Karloff struggling to walk downstairs. Price loved the chance to work with a real Raven. The duel between Price and Karloff became iconic, and even inspired scenes in later movies like Big Trouble in Little China. Vincent Price was more than just a horror actor. He was a man completely consumed by the roles he played. When he signed on for The Abominable Dr. Phibes in 1971, he didn't just act the part. He dove deep into the ancient stories behind it. He spent months in London's theological libraries, studying the 10 plagues of Egypt. He even brought hand-drawn sketches to the set, filled with Hebrew letters tied to the biblical curses. His obsession didn't stop there. He used pieces from his personal $2 million art collection to help build the look of Dr. Phibes' lair. He even visited Egyptian museums for weeks, learning how the dead were preserved, and practiced on animal remains to make it feel real. But behind the camera, things were falling apart. In 1972, while working on Dr. Phibes Rises Again, everything exploded when Price heard a publicist mention that the studio was planning to replace him with Robert Quarry. Price had no idea. Quarry tried to charm him by singing opera, but Price snapped back with, "Well, I knew you weren't a fucking actor." That one line started a silent war between the two men that lasted 20 years. Price found out he was being pushed out because his $75,000 per film salary was too high for a studio chasing cheaper stars. The production cost about $150,000, but the tension on set was so bad that Price and Quarry refused to talk, using others to pass messages. Things got worse with the 1974 film Madhouse. The original title was The Revenge of Dr. Death, but the script was so rushed that actors got it on a Friday and started filming the next Monday. Price was furious when he learned the studio had planned it for Quarry all along and gave him what he called a cameo in my own career. He told the director, "This is what 14 years of loyalty gets you, a mercy killing." The $300,000 movie was so cheap that old horror clips were stuffed in just to make it longer. Price spent most of his time alone in his trailer, refusing to promote it. It marked the end of a long chapter with AIP, a partnership that had brought in over $50 million. In his personal life, things weren't any calmer. His marriage to Mary Grant, which had lasted 24 years, came crashing down in 1973. While filming Theater of Blood in mid-1972, Price fell for Coral Brown, a 58-year-old actress who originally thought he looked like a dirty old creature. Actress Diana Rigg set them up, arranging quiet dinners and meetings. The moment everything unraveled came on March 18, 1973, during Price's appearance on This Is Your Life. Mary had no idea about the affair. Right after the show, Price told her everything. By August 15, 1973, they were divorced. Mary walked away with $500,000 and custody of their daughter, Victoria. She blamed his long history of falling for younger, dramatic women, pointing to past rumors about Anna May Wong and Deanna Durbin. Later that year, Price worked on a holiday cartoon called The Little Troll Prince, where he was paid $25,000 to do the voice work. But the recording turned into a storm. He fought with producers who wanted to change the script. Price believed it was disrespectful to children's intelligence. He recorded single lines 15 to 20 times just to get them right. When told to speed up for commercial breaks, he shouted, "I don't perform for stopwatches." He even added theological notes to the script about troll legends and refused to sign off until they made his changes. His edits delayed the cartoon by 3 months and cost an extra $75,000. Price shocked everyone again in 1977 when he walked away from movies to focus on cooking. He and Mary had released a massive cookbook in 1965 with more than 456 pages. It had recipes from restaurants all over the world, like the Ivy in London and Sardi's in New York. He started doing cooking shows and traveling to food events. His show, Cooking Price-Wise, in 1971 became a hit. Their home dinners became famous too. Mary would create new dishes in a walk-in kiln, and Price would recreate restaurant meals they had collected from their travels. In 1982, young filmmaker Tim Burton created a short movie called Vincent and asked Price to narrate it. By then, Price was already battling the early stages of Parkinson's. Instead of hiding it, he used his real tremors and speech struggles in the voiceover. It only made the 6-minute film more powerful. Price called it the most gratifying thing that ever happened, and said it felt like true immortality. The film only played in one Los Angeles cinema, but it won awards in London, Chicago, Seattle, and France. In 1986, Price finally got to do something he had dreamed of for years. He voiced a Disney villain. At 75, he became Professor Ratigan in The Great Mouse Detective. His performance was so over-the-top and dramatic that Disney nearly cut his lines for being too scary. But animators loved it. They sketched his real-life gestures and put them straight into the character. Price's ad-libs turned Ratigan into one of Disney's most memorable villains. But behind the laughter, Price was hiding something serious. His art-selling project with Sears, which ran from 1962 to 1971, turned into a scandal. Sears had given him full control to choose the art, and more than 50,000 pieces were sold, including works by Rembrandt, Picasso, Goya, and Dali. Prices ranged from $10 to $3,000, but soon critics noticed Sears was also selling reproductions that looked almost identical. Some buyers paid $800 for what they believed was a real Mondrian or Picasso, and no one could tell if it was genuine. Even though Price meant well, the reputation of the collection was damaged. In 1987, Price joined Bette Davis in The Whales of August. The film should have been a quiet farewell, but their old feud came back with full force. Davis, who had suffered a stroke, called Price cruel names. They had fought in the 1940s, and the bitterness came roaring back. They couldn't be in the same room without tension. Each night, they called the director to complain about each other. Price's Parkinson's had worsened by then, and Davis struggled with her own health. But they couldn't bury the past. Even his marriage to Coral Brown was far from traditional. She was bisexual, and in 2015, Price's daughter, Victoria, revealed that her father had also been romantically involved with men. When she came out to him in 1984, he told her, "I know just how you feel because I've had deep, loving relationships with men." He became one of Hollywood's earliest LGBTQ+ allies, joining PFLAG and speaking out during the AIDS crisis. He even recorded public service messages to raise awareness, at a time when others were silent. But his health kept declining. In the 1980s, he was diagnosed with emphysema from years of smoking. During the filming of Dead Heat in 1988, he collapsed on set. He kept needing oxygen between scenes, but refused to quit. He was only contracted for 3 days, but he volunteered to work longer with no extra pay. In 1990, he made his last film appearance in Edward Scissorhands. Director Tim Burton had idolized him since childhood. But during the emotional death scene, Price fainted multiple times. His trembling hands were real. Parkinson's had made it hard to even speak. His daughter Victoria appeared in the film as a reporter, adding a quiet, personal goodbye. The role felt like a farewell to the world. Victoria and Vincent had a difficult relationship. Born April 27, 1962, she often felt abandoned. When he married Coral, things became worse. She later wrote that her father had once admired Hitler in the 1930s and even went to one of his rallies. She also revealed that when his health was failing, she could go weeks without reaching him. But in the end, she became his caretaker, moving to Los Angeles as he lost his ability to walk, speak, and breathe on his own. In 1992, Price was diagnosed with lung cancer. He quit all work, including his beloved PBS show, Mystery. But what surprised people most was the depression that followed. He began intense therapy and finally admitted to years of guilt about how his choices had affected Victoria and others. He spent the last year of his life mostly in bed, fighting not just physical pain, but the emotional weight of a lifetime. He died on October 25, 1993, at the age of 82. After his death, a bitter legal fight broke out over his art collection. His wife Coral had died in 1991, and the collection, which included works by Dali, Chagall, and Rembrandt, became tangled in years of legal claims. Even though he had donated 90 pieces to East Los Angeles College in 1957, the rest of the collection became part of a long, messy court battle. In total, Price had acted in over 110 films, though only about 20 were horror. His voice in Michael Jackson's Thriller in 1983 took just 2 takes. He was paid $20,000 but didn't take royalties, a decision that cost him millions. But he never cared. He said what mattered most was the work itself. The Vincent Price Art Museum now holds more than 9,000 pieces and keeps his legacy alive. His influence still shows up in modern horror films and Tim Burton's work. His daughter's final revelation came in 2015. She said she was almost certain her father had romantic relationships with men, confirming what many had suspected. During the Hollywood blacklist years, Price survived not by hiding who he was, but by standing up for what he believed in. He was never just a horror icon. He was a man of deep contradictions, quiet courage, and lasting influence.